From Autosport.com and Autosport Magazine, I'm Kevin Turner, and this is the Autosport Podcast. Well, welcome to the latest episode of our brand new Top 10s series, focusing on all things F1. And it's a bit different in episode 2. We are going to do the top 10 F1 circuits, and that's just not the tracks that are on the calendar now, but going back to the very start of the Drivers' World Championship in 1950. And I'm pleased to say that I'm actually at one of the tracks that's on this list. I don't think it's giving too much away to say that Silverstone is on this list, and thank you to the British Racing Drivers Club. We are here in the farm to talk about the greatest F1 circuits, and joining me is someone who I suspect has been to very many of these tracks. In fact, probably all on the list. There have been over 70 circuits that have held a World Championship Grand Prix. Maurice Hamilton, I would love to know how many of these you've been to. Probably quite a few, I imagine. All the top 10?
Yes.
There we go. That's amazing. So we're going to have some personal insights. I've only been to a handful, so our criteria for judging these might be slightly different. So, well, how are you first of all before we get into the tracks? It's nice to be at a race circuit, I think, to talk about racetracks.
The home of British motor racing. I can't think of a better place to talk about racetracks now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get into it then. So, the criteria for this for me. How great the track is as a driver challenge. I think we have to factor that in. Longevity in the championship, impact that it's had on the series, as we discussed with the teams before, but also maybe the sort of events that is it good for racing? Is it more of a driver challenge, or does it do both? So there's quite a lot, and I think our choices will probably depend on how we weight that different criteria. So it should be an interesting debate, hopefully. As I say, there are only over 70 circuits to look through, so this took quite a while to put together, as you can imagine. So I'm going to do something slightly differently. Normally we just do a countdown from 10 to 1, and our special guest argues or not. But actually I'm going to make our special guest pick 10th. Because I had 3 that tied for 10th, and I can't possibly print a list that has 3 at 10 because I'd get all sorts of abuse for that, I expect. So the 3 tracks that I picked that were vying for 10th spot: Watkins Glen, that held 20 World Championship races; the Ring, not the A1 ring or Red Bull ring, even though it's on the same place, same venue, not counting that, 18 times; or Brands Hatch, which was 14 times on the World Championship calendar, and of course did have its own non-championship event with the Race of Champions for many years as well. So I'm kind of passing the buck, really. I can't decide which one of these 3. So which one do you think we should be going for?
I just couldn't decide, because every circuit, it may sound an obvious thing to say, Kevin, but every circuit is different and enjoyable for very different reasons. For me, we're going to talk about the point of view of drivability and how difficult was the track. But for me, it's all about the presence, the atmosphere, the enjoyment factor that I would have got from it, either as a race fan, like here at Silverstone, camping outside the gates in 1967 with my mates.
Was that your first Grand Prix?
Yeah, here. Yeah, no, my first Grand Prix was 1959 at Aintree. My dad took me. So that's gone back a bit.
Oh, wow. So that was a Jack Brabham.
Yeah, correct.
Jack Brabham Cooper win.
It was, yeah. And I mean, that actually threw me a bit, because I thought all Grand Prix tracks would be like that, because if you remember, it's round the horse racing course, and they used the facilities. So you had the magnificent grandstands at Aintree, where we watched the Grand Prix from the top of Tats Corner, and I thought all Grand Prix tracks would be like that. And of course, as we saw, I mean, Silverstone was at that time, and other circuits were pretty basic, shall we say, the facilities. But anyway, that's by the by. So it's all about enjoyment factor for me. And that would include the atmosphere, but also the wow factor. If you stood at the fence at, say, the old Beckett's Hill, and the old, and watched them power sliding through, or coming through the old woodcut.
Pre-chicane.
Pre-chicane, and there's a little bump getting sideways. So the combination of all of those things. So they're all different. I mean, Watkins Glen. It was my very first race as a fan in America, so it's lots of good memories for me, because the Chamber of Commerce, Watkins Glen is a small town, and the Chamber of Commerce would arrange accommodation for you. So you would apply in advance, and you would go into somebody's home. So I was in some child's bedroom in somebody's house where we stayed, and it was just so nice. And then to the other end of the scale, where when I was a journalist, and I went right up to the last Grand Prix in 1980, And I stayed in the Glen Motor Inn, which, of course, is the famous place where all the drivers stayed, overlooking the Lake Seneca, which was beautiful. And in between that, you drove up the hill to the circuit, which was actually a tricky circuit, quite not the most difficult, I have to say, but it had atmosphere galore because it had this area in the middle called the bog, which was the police didn't go near it, and it was unruly. Is a very simple description of what went on in there.
It's their version of Bathurst.
Yeah. I mean, at one point they even hijacked a Greyhound coach and took it in and tried to set fire to it.
Oh, I think I've seen pictures of that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But they would take people's cars and put them in. I mean, it was
Not sure if that's a plus or a minus.
No, it was a pretty wild. That was a pretty wild area, but the rest of it was super. And then when you'd finished the racing, you'd go to the Seneca Lodge, which was a pub, a sort of hunting lodge halfway between the circuit going down the hill into Watkins Glen, and that was wild. After the race, that was absolutely wild. And I remember when James Hunt had won in 1976, and he ended up in there. He'd had a few beers before he even got there. Because if you remember, this was his big comeback. He was on the fight against Niki Lauda, and he'd just been disqualified from the British Grand Prix not long before. So he was just having the big comeback. He won the United States Grand Prix at Watkins Glen and arrived with his entourage, 3 sheets to the wind, and he had a builder's hat on with a flashing orange light on the top, and a girl under each arm. And it was that was
fairly standard James Hunt.
Yeah,
really.
so that was Watkins Glen for me. A wonderful, wonderful place. Loved it. Now, you mentioned the Österreichring, the old Österreichring, the original Österreichring. That was beautiful from every perspective because you were in the mountains. It was a very, very picturesque circuit, but also very fast, very entertaining to watch at. One particular place I used to enjoy watching was when they would come barreling along the top straight and into the Bosch curve. There would be, just as they hit the brakes, they'd go over a little crest, and then they'd start to turn in and the back of the car would go light. And they'd be arriving full tilt, top gear, 180 miles an hour, on the brakes and down the gear, and car going light as it turned in. That was someplace. And I have to say, Nigel Mansell, I remember, in the Lotus going in there was, awesome. Gilles Villeneuve in the Ferrari, again, running right against the barrier on the exit. Superb place to go and watch.
I should say that the average speed, by the time that we get to the mid-80s with the turbo cars, the average speed around the Österreichring was nearly 160 miles an hour.
Well, there you are.
And that is not, we're not talking like an old Hockenheim, just straights. We're talking big, proper, fast corners, aren't we? So one that required lots of commitment. But then I suppose you could say that, not in terms of the speed, but commitment, Brands Hatch as well, because the runoff, well, I mean, it's one of the reasons why Grand Prix cars have long since outgrown the Kent circuit. But that required some commitment as well. I mean, 170 miles an hour approaching Paddock Hill Bend must have been pretty impressive to watch as well.
It was, and you could sit in the grandstand there and watch them coming down the straight towards you and coming up the rise to the Paddock Hill, and then see them. In those days, of course, you could tell where they were braking because the nose of the car would dip, so you knew where they were hitting the brakes, which was a great telltale sign. And then them throwing it into the corner, which then dropped away, and you could see a little touch of opposite as they got to the apex if you were sitting in the grandstand. So terrific circuit. Having been first to Silverstone and then going to Brands Hatch, that was actually a revelation because here was a circuit that dipped up and down and was very, very challenging. Out the back, the dip Pilgrim's Drop and then up into Hawthorne, again worth watching there. Further around Dingledale Corner, Blind Corner uphill approach to it, fabulous to watch at. A great atmosphere, but a very difficult circuit. Yeah, and runoff in certain places. Well, there wasn't any.
No. I mean, I'm torn. I think between the Österreichring and Brands Hatch for this spot. Maybe we could look at sort of great moments at those two tracks. I mean, Österreichring comes to mind. Alan Jones winning from 14th on the grid. In the shadow in 1977.
Yeah.
And then the close finish in 1982 where Keke Rosberg just failed to beat Elio De Angelis by 0.05 of a second. But then Brands Hatch has got a couple of those as well. Nigel Mansell's first World Championship win in the European Grand Prix in 85, beating Nelson Piquet in 1986. So it's difficult to. Is there a moment that stands out for you from either of those venues?
Yes. For me. My dad and I would come across the Race of Champions, which was every March at Brands Hatch. It was our first chance to see the the Grand Prix cars. And there we saw Dan Gurney win in the Eagle, which was fantastic because I was a great Dan Gurney fan. Bruce McLaren won in the M7A. It was a win for him. So lots of, the entry was half what you would expect, but it was still Formula One. It was still Formula One at Brands Hatch. You were seeing and hearing Formula One cars for the first time that year. So a lot of fond memories, but also a good track for them to go racing on.
That's a really good point, actually. If we look at non-championship races, the ones that come to mind are the Race of Champions at Brands Hatch or the BRDC International Trophy at Silverstone. So maybe that edges it towards Brands. In fact, Brands was the last track to hold a contemporary Formula One non-championship race, wasn't it, in 1983, which seems, that was such an intrinsic part of the calendar, wasn't it, non-championship races in the 50s, 60s and the 70s. It seems, probably to a modern fan, that sounds crazy that you would have non-championship races, but they were quite interesting, weren't they, some of those races.
It was a chance to see a Formula One car. If you were a British fan, so one year we had the Race of Champions, the Daily Express International Trophy here at Silverstone, and also the Gold Cup at Oulton Park in August, September. So these were opportunities to see, and also what the teams would do. They would try things on their cars, perhaps in those races, or they would put a young driver in, which was again a very interesting thing to see. So we were very, very fortunate in those days to get those opportunities.
I would recommend people see if they could find the video of the 1983 Race of Champions. I believe it is available, because the last few laps with Danny Sullivan in the Tyrrell, all over Keke Rosberg, with the most blistered rear tyre I think I've ever seen, driving it like a rally car, is absolutely phenomenal. Let's give it to Brands Hatch on the basis of the non-championship element. And although it's only those 14 World Championship races over a long period of time, because obviously it was alternating with Silverstone, so it's probably got the longevity score as well. So we'll give it to Brands, but honourable mention certainly to Watkins Glen and the Österreich Ring. Right, number 9. So I won't make you have to pick any of these individual positions, but you see if you can move things around. Number 9 is Montreal. 44 World Championship races, which I think is... I was surprised, actually, that it's been around that long. Obviously arrived in the 70s, and it's one of those sort of, it feels like a bit of a slow burner in that it's become one of the tracks that people look forward to the most. It does quite often throw an interesting race up. Obviously, Jenson Button overtaking Sebastian Vettel the last lap one year, and so it's actually thrown up some quite interesting races. Alan Jones versus Gilles Villeneuve, fantastic duel they had in 79. So in the end, I thought, yes, I wanted to put Adelaide in, because I absolutely loved Adelaide holding the season finale. I thought that was great. That's where, for me, the Australian Grand Prix should be the season finale. Maybe that's a function of age, but I thought Montreal was held 4 times as many races, so I kind of gave it to Montreal in the end. Is that fair?
Oh, I hadn't thought of Adelaide, but now that you mention it, I would have it in there. It was a phenomenal race to go to. Wonderful, wonderful race. Mainly because when the Grand Prix was in Adelaide, the whole city got round it, because the track was just on the edge of the. It is a small city, and they all threw themselves into it. The track itself was very difficult. Was an interesting track, the way it ran through the horse race course where the pits and paddock were, but the atmosphere, being the end of the season as well, brought a lot to it. And then we had that famous 1986 championship finale where all 3...
Remarkable race that was.
All 3 contenders at one point, if they'd stayed where they were, would have won the championship. That's the way the race played out. So a fantastic place, Adelaide. But Montreal, lots going for it. Its location for a start, on the island where there's an Olympic rowing lake alongside, and it's the only race that I've ever been to where you would go by boat into the paddock, which is if you had a lovely June morning, which we often had, and going by boat across the lake into the paddock was just fantastic. Lovely way to start the day. Some great viewing, some very difficult corners. The final chicane, blimey.
Well, Champions Wall, or Champions way around you want to put it.
See them coming out of that. I remember very clearly the championship dust-off between Nelson Piquet and Alan Jones in 1980. There was a lot of tension that weekend. But it was also cold, because you had the race, as it now is in the spring, summer, But then it was towards the end of the season, and it was very cold. I mean, the wind was coming off the St. Lawrence River, and it was very, very chilly. So it wasn't a particularly pleasant place to be. But then the plus factor was it was right close to the city, so you went by metro. So you could get in and out easily. You didn't have to park your car and any of that nonsense. It was just so convenient. So, yeah, a lot going from Montreal. And you really surprised me when you said, 44 Grand Prix?
I know. What do you have in a bit? Because the footage isn't brilliant from that 1980 race. Did you have a view as to whose fault the clash was that caused between Jones and Piquet?
I would have said it was more Jones than Piquet.
Yes.
I think Jonesy sort of edged him into the wall. Sorry. If that had happened today, there'd be a steward's inquiry, and probably Jones would have had a 10-second penalty, I would have thought.
Oh, don't get me started on
no,
penalties.
I know.
That's a podcast subject for another day, I think. But you see, you're making me think I should have put Adelaide in, but I think Montreal seems to be quite a popular one with fans and journalists alike, and it's not a bad driver's track, is it? And you can get a little bit of overtaking because of the back straight into the chicane.
That hairpin at the end where you've got a horseshoe of grandstands around it, the atmosphere in there is phenomenal. And I know some guys from here who go there every year because they just love, and they've got their seats in that grandstand and that horseshoe because the atmosphere with the car, you see the cars for quite a while, and there's out braking going on coming in, and then the exit coming out, and then away, accelerating hard. It's a great spot.
And it's also, of course, the venue where both Jean Alesi and Robert Kubica, who both, for different reasons, should have won more Grand Prix, took their only World Championship wins. So I kind of gave it a little bit of a bonus point there as well. I think they're two fan favourites.
And Kubica had that mother and father accident.
Oh, the year before. Oh, my goodness. That was
how he got away with that, I do not know. But that was terrifying to watch. But so pleased to see him okay.
I think the only recent F1 crash that's worse than that is Romain Grosjean's fireball, which was like an image from a different era, wasn't it, when that happened? But I don't think I'll give him too much away to say that Bahrain is not on this list. Right, well, number 8 then. We'll move on from Montreal. Number 8, Kyalami. And I've gone for the original layout.
Oh, it has to be.
The big fast one, not the one they used in 92, 93, the big proper one. 18 times it was in the World Championship, so not a bad run. And this was a proper driver's track, wasn't it? And it had incredibly long straight for overtaking as well, so it kind of ticked quite a few of the boxes.
It was fabulous. I've got mixed emotions about it because the 1977 South African Grand Prix was my first as a professional journalist.
Oh, God.
So
what a one to start with.
I had the absolute joy of being there as a professional journalist, fully accredited, having blagged my way into the paddock for several years. I actually had made it. I was there. I was reporting, doing a reportage for a newspaper. And then poor Tom Price is killed. And I was standing at Crowthorne, on the bank of Crowthorne, where he ended up, sadly. So in the space of an afternoon, I had the fantastic high of standing in the sunshine as an accredited journalist on the bank at Crowthorne, which is one of the great spectator spots in the world of Formula One, because you saw them coming down the long straight. They come over the crest, flat out, down the straight towards you on the brakes, turning into this quite fast right-hander, down a hill and away. Wonderful place to be, and then for that accident to happen. So I was seeing both sides of the coin in an afternoon, and it was pretty well. I had to ask myself some questions, such as, this is the way it's going to be. This can happen because unfortunately fatalities were quite common in those days, and you had to accept this is the way it could be. But I knew that having had to fight as hard as I had to get where I wasn't going to give it up. But it was a lesson for me. Probably
fair to say that in that particular instance, it wasn't really anything to do with the track itself, because it wasn't a crash, was it? It was a marshal running across the road and being hit by Price's shadow, and then the fire extinguisher hit Tom, didn't it? So not something that you would say was a innate characteristic of the track.
No.
It was one of those freak accidents that could happen anywhere.
No, it wasn't. And it was a difficult track, and had rise and fall, and you could. As a journalist, you could walk around it and see the various aspects and stand right close to some of the corners. But the thing about the 77 race, the plus about it was Niki Lauda's victory, which was fantastic, because it was his first win since his bad accident in 76. And it was quite an emotional event for him because he nursed that car across the line because part of Tom Price's shadow, the rollover bar had got stuck underneath the chassis of the Ferrari, and all the water had drained away. As he crossed the line, the engine blew up. So it was, quite an emotional weekend.
Yes, and it did host some great races, didn't it? I mean, Jackie Stewart won from 16th, I think, in 1973. Alain Prost, I think, largely forgotten drive from a lap behind in 1982 as well. So it's had some good races. So are you happy for the old style car?
Oh yeah. And I went to the new one as well. And God, it was just not a patch in the old one, you know. And don't forget also the driver's strike in '82.
Of course, yes. Yes, yeah, where DeAngelis entertained them, and DeAngelis and Gilles Villeneuve entertained them, I think.
Yeah,
with some piano and that sort of thing. Yeah, imagine that now. Mind you, that was all organised by Loud, wasn't it? I think it's brilliant that he basically comes back to the sport and immediately goes, "Nope, you chaps shouldn't be signing this new document on the bus.
Yeah.
We're going to go boycott the race in a hotel." Well, that was Kyalami. I mean, we should say also that at the moment, despite the fact that the F1 calendar is ludicrously big, not an African race. To me, that Kyalami would be a sensible venue to be looking at as a. I know that the new layout isn't the same as the old one, but
and you know, South Africa's got a tremendous history of motor racing and Formula One as well, non-championship races and so on. So yeah, no, it really ought to be there.
Right, well, number 7, Interlagos, and for this one, I have included both versions because I think both the 4.9 mile Epic original and the current 2.7 mile version have got pluses to them. It's not just the old one was brilliant, which it was probably the better driver challenge, but we've had some really great races on the new venue, the new layout, and there have been 42 World Championship races now in Interlagos, including some of the great season finales, 2008 being the obvious one that comes to mind, decided at the last corner, and it's one of those that a few years ago it feels like a bit of a slow burn. I mean, if you look at it on the track map, you go fine, but it seems to produce better races than you would expect. Is that fair, do you think?
Yeah, great racing there. But above all, the atmosphere. I mean, I'm often asked, what's your favourite race? You know, all the races you've seen. And I list 2 as a place to go, Monza and Interlagos.
Really?
Purely from the point of view of atmosphere. It's brilliant at Interlagos, particularly like '08, for example. Championship finale. One of the drivers is Brazilian, so you know that the crowd, they were there from 9 o'clock in the morning, in the sunshine, samba band playing in the grandstand. The place just throbs with atmosphere, and also if you're lucky enough to be on the grid is in a dip, and the grandstand is towering above you, but right close. You know, Monza's a bit further back, but it's right close. And the place just hums. I mean, absolutely hums. So you've got the tension of the build-up before the Grand Prix with the championship contenders. You know, at the end of this race, one way or the other, the championship is going to be decided. There's a Brazilian in it. So you've got the pre-race nerves as it is, and you've got this buzz all around you. The noise coming from the grandstand almost drowns out the cars when they start the engines. It's a phenomenal place. But the track itself, great to watch. And also you can watch from up above. You can see a lot of the circuit down below. And then you can trace the layout of the old one, which must have been awesome. I never did see a race there, but it must have been absolutely
with that incredibly fast first corner.
That's right. So if you imagine, now they come up the pit straight and then they drop down the hill. In the old days, they kept going. It just kept going into a long, long, long left. And apparently, talking to old hands, what you did during quali was you would be standing in the pits, listening to them come by, listening to see if the driver lifted or not, going into that long, long, long left. And if he didn't lift, you knew it was going to be a good lap.
I remember talking to Tony Southgate about the Shadow DN5, which for my money is one of the great F1 cars that didn't win a Championship Grand Prix, but of course it should have won the 1975 Brazilian Grand Prix. Jean-Pierre Jarier was running away with the race. And he said that one of the reasons that he thought it was good there was it was actually quite a high downforce car for the era, and Jarier could just be absolutely flat through that first corner in the race.
Yep.
Which kind of puts your point into perspective, really. But I mean, just I think you mentioned the atmosphere. I always think that the 1991 Brazilian Grand Prix, which for my money again is one of Ayrton Senna's greatest wins, greatest races, because of obviously the pain that he had.
Yeah.
It's in the film and the new documentary series as well. And to trying to win at home after all those years of not winning in Rio and then the clash the year before. And the atmosphere when he finally did it, because he was already a hero in Brazil by then, of course, must have been absolutely incredible there.
It was electric. And you knew as the laps were counting down, he's got to win this. I think he was doing a commentary at the time. And you were actually fingers crossed praying, because you thought, if he doesn't win, we're not going to get out of here. It's going to be if somebody else goes and wins. But it was phenomenal. Absolutely. The place went berserk, and he was emotional. The whole thing added up to what the crowd had come to see, because Emerson Fittipaldi had started this passion for Formula One, and Ayrton had been sucked up in that as a lad, and now here he is continuing it as the home hero. It was superb, wonderful.
Excellent. Well, that's Interlagos at 7. Number 6 is Suzuka, 35 championship races. Now, this is partly here because it's such a great driver's track. I mean, from the moment that it arrived on the calendar in 1987, I think Gerhard Berger immediately was one of those that said, this is awesome, which is a bit ridiculous, really, because he'd been around for 25 years at that point, just hadn't been on the World Championship calendar. It's hosted some, well, I was going to say great races. Perhaps it should be memorable races as much as anything else. I mean, probably people are going to be thinking 89, 90 championship deciders crashing and all that sort of stuff between Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost. But for me, I put it on here really more because of the driver challenge of the S's and the old 130R rather than anything else. Because I think now, with the way that modern cars are, the size of them and the dirty air, the races themselves tend not to be so exciting. Having said that, 2005 Japanese Grand Prix is regarded by many as one of the greatest races of all time. So, yeah, I thought I'd put it up in 6th. I thought it deserved to be there as a racetrack.
I agree. On my notes, I've written Japan, ! Because you were going to this wonderful country, which I just fell in love with from my very first visit in '86. And everything about it contributed towards the feeling of well-being when you went to Suzuka. They can't do enough for you, but also stepping into the atmosphere. It had this buzz about it because there's a fun fair right next door to the track, and it's a proper fun fair. I mean, it really is very well organised and quite interesting. And so you've got the crowds in there enjoying that, and all the music and noise that you get from that. You get the passionate fans who will lie on the pavement overnight and sleep on the pavement waiting to get in. You walk past them on your way back to the hotel, there they are. And when they're in the grandstands, they're so respectful and reverential that there's silence. All you hear is the clicking of cameras. Back in the days when cameras clicked, there would be no noise. They would just watch, and they would sit into the hours of darkness, looking across at the garages of the mechanics working, just to watch, do nothing else but watch. Having said that, when the Japanese fans got going, my God, they were frightening, because I remember Gerhard Berger. I was walking to the track. You had to walk through the fun fair to the pedestrian tunnel going underneath to get into the paddock. One morning, it wasn't race morning, but it was maybe Friday or Saturday. I was walking through, and to my great surprise, I saw Gerhard Berger walking through. And I ran up to him and I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Yeah, I love this." He said, "I love this. Watch what happens." And sure, one by one, the fans saw him. And in the end, they were walking backwards, trying to take pictures, falling over each other, crying, touching him. And I said, "How did you do it?" He said, he kept his hands in his pocket. He said, "Don't sign anything, don't stop." And he said to me, "Keep going, keep walking, keep walking. And I'm not going to take my hands out of my pockets," and just keep going until he got to the pedestrian tunnel. By the time we got there, there was a little security man at the tunnel entrance, and he was just minding his own business, thinking he was in for a nice quiet day. And he saw this mob coming towards him with Gerhard. Of course, he was much taller than the fans coming towards him, and he looked terrified. He didn't know what to do. And we went through, and this poor man had to deal with this mob who were trying to follow through.
I bet Berger found that hilarious because he was quite a practical joker himself.
He loved it. That's why he was doing it.
Yeah. I mean, Damon Hill fans would obviously appreciate Suzuka as well. I mean, I think that the 94 race in the wet was probably his greatest drive. I think he thinks that. And of course, he clinched his 96 title there as well, which a lot of British fans would remember. So it has had some special moments, hasn't it? And I think if we're talking qualifying sessions, which we don't often, I think that the 2000 session between Mika Hakkinen and Mark Schumacher, in terms of the pure competition of pushing each other faster and faster and faster, old style qualifying session, was just remarkable.
And one of the greatest pieces of video you will ever see is the onboard of Ayrton on his qualifying lap one year, with a manual gear shift, and the it's phenomenal. And he's taking the car to the limit, and you can see the vibration and down through the gears and into spoon and round, and then through the 130R. I mean, that was just back in the day, that was take a deep breath.
Well, it's one of those circuits where a driver can make a difference, isn't
Yes.
it? It's not just about the car.
No.
So that was why I put it up there. But hopefully the new rules coming in 2026 will mean we'll get some better racing there, because as brilliant as Max Verstappen's qualifying lap was, pole position lap in 2025 was, the two McLarens just followed him for the race. The race itself wasn't particularly thrilling.
Let's not go down that road.
No, okay, let's not.
Cars.
No, okay, fine. All right, fine. We'll, this one's just about circuits. We'll do cars another day. Right, number 5. Now, I don't know if this is controversial or not, but it is Monaco. 71 races. So in a way, this is the worst racetrack in the world, because by my reckoning, there hasn't been a genuine pass for the lead of the Monaco Grand Prix, except at starts or if a car's failing, since Michele Alboreto overtook Alain Prost in 1985. So that's 4 decades of not great racing at the front. I know that there has been the odd amazing race like Olivier Panis winning in 1996. So in a way, it's terrible. People have been complaining that it's too small for modern F1 cars since the 1970s. And yet, it kind of has to be here, doesn't it?
It does. A season full of Monacos would be terrible.
Oh, God, yes.
But one, as an outlier is so important, because it's so different. It's challenging in a very different way. It's all about concentration for an hour and a half. And I mean, I think the telling point is, if you talk to a driver who's won Monaco about the experience, you can see it in their eyes how much it's meant to them to have got through the weekend, to got through all the hype that's going on and all the fuss and so on. The drama of qualifying, where you've got to hang it you've got to go right to the edge during quali, and then in the race to concentrate for an hour and a half plus and not relax for a second, even if you're in the lead. The track surface is changing. If you start to slow down, you lose your rhythm, and then boom, you hit a barrier. So you've got to focus for the entire distance. I remember Mika Hakkinen, who was not really one of the greatest talkers in a press conference afterwards, just waxing lyrical when he'd won, and talking about, it was just an outpouring of relief, of emotion that he'd done it, but also the sense of achievement. Because he said at the time, I remember, because Keke Rosberg won it in, what was it, 83?
Yeah, we're starting on slicks in the wet.
Yeah, what a brilliant win. And Keke had told Mika, because he was managing Mika, look, I can tell you, if you win this, it's one you'll never forget. And Mika said, it's very true.
I think he still regards it as one of his, even though as a race, again, it wasn't a close race. It was just the shit. It's almost against the event rather than the opposition, isn't it? At that point,
and nursing. I mean, Daniel Ricciardo's win when he was nursing the car home. You could see the stress that had taken, the effort it had taken after the race. So no, we do need it. And anyway, to go and watch there is, I mean, the swimming pool chicane. Oh my Lord. I remember, was it 91? Senna took pole, and I've never seen anything like it. We were fortunate.
And that was when it was wall entry,
yes,
wasn't it? It wasn't just the curve they have now. It was wall.
Wasn't. And using my press pass, I was standing at ground level so watching them come out of the back, coming by and going left and right past me, and we knew the lap was coming because time was ticking away, and he'd come by on the warm-up lap, and you thought, wait for it.
This is it. This is going to be it.
Wait for it. And the cars, everybody's trying at that point, right? And this McLaren just danced. That's the only way I can just danced into view. It just came across. It shimmied across the track like it was out of control, in control. He was catching it all the way on the very, very edge, kissed about, and then passed us. And it was out of sight and gone. And the thing about it was, he was only in view for, a couple of seconds, right? And everybody waited for the announcer to announce the time, okay? and Emilio Rashomon for you, and everybody just, yo! And then when he came by on the slowing down lap, normally, when somebody's done something, everybody's like a football game, everybody's cheering. The whole place stood up and applauded. It was no cheering, it was just respect.
Respect, yeah.
It was incredible, absolutely incredible. It was, it makes my hair stand up on the back of my hands thinking about it now.
Oh, I mean, I've been working on greatest qualifying laps in F1 history, and quite a few of them are at Monaco.
Yeah.
And that's because of that driver challenge, isn't it? Of the precision you need, the coming in with, the sidewall rubbed off, with all smudged when it had Goodyear written around the sides, and the tyres were a bit bigger, and some great races there. I think Graham Hill's greatest race was there, coming back after having gone down the escape road. There's just so much, isn't it? It's such an intrinsic part of F1 history, and going back even further, because the first Monaco Grand Prix was 1929, so it's probably the first on this list of pre-F1 history. But I also think, to your point, that it's an outlier. In a way, it is more important now because we've got so many circuits with runoffs that it's almost become even more of an outlier than it was when perhaps circuits were a little bit more like that anyway. So every year I think, it's Monaco, but then also, it's Monaco.
Yeah.
So let us know. What do you think? Do you think Monaco should be high, should be lower? Are you one of those people that shouldn't be there at all? Let me know. Kevin.turn at autosport.com. I'm sure my dad would actually really have a go at me when he hears this because he hates Monaco, but there we go. Sorry, Dad. Number 4, another track that goes back to the 1920s, Monza. 75 World Championship races at the time of recording. The only reason it's not got the full house is the 1980 Italian Grand Prix being held at Imola. Otherwise, it would have had a full set, which is quite remarkable. It's hosted more World Championship races than anywhere else. I've gone for this, you'll probably agree with this, because I've gone for this more due to the sort of atmosphere and history than for the racetracks. I think since they put the chicanes in, most Italian Grand Prix haven't been spectacularly exciting. But the atmosphere, I mean, it's a place where you can feel the atmosphere when there's no cars going around at Monza. You can almost hear it. It sounds like a cliche, but I think you really can. Up on the banking, it's incredible. It's just part of F1's history, isn't it? There always needs to be an Italian Grand Prix at Monza.
Look, from the moment you drive through the gates into the park, you know you're somewhere special. Through this beautiful old tree-lined avenues, which have been there for donkey's years, and were there when Ascari and Fangio and all the rest had driven down this same road to go in. You know you're entering a piece of history. It's crumbling around the edges, and that is part of it. That's so lovely, that faded pastel paint everywhere, and then into the paddock itself. But, I mean, I've written here, on my notes I've written, madness, ! Because Monza is mad. Because the Italian fans are so passionate, so noisy, that you're aware of their presence, and wherever you go, when you're walking into the paddock, they're just lining the fences and calling and shouting and making a fuss as only they can. So you have all of that, but then you have the actual racing. Yeah, you're right. The races aren't particularly great, but I can tell you, the press box used to be at the back of the main grandstand. It was open. And the sound of the cars coming out of the Parabolica and accelerating past you, flat out past you, was wonderful. It's just, again, different to anything else. And you had the massive grandstand, the pits opposite, the noise echoing all around. Fabulous. And then, of course, before the race started, you'd be witnessing arguments over seats with the spectators because half of them didn't have tickets, and there'd be punch-ups going on down below you. The whole thing would be part of it. And then also, another thing, a memory I have of Monza is during practice at one point, I would always try and go to the braking area on the inside of the track for the first chicane and watch them brake from 200 plus down to 50, 60 miles an hour, and 100 metres, 120 metres, and just get the braking point just right. And your admiration for what those drivers do raises phenomenally.
Well, we've talked about Monaco being an outlier. I would argue that Monza is also an outlier now, but in the other direction.
Yeah.
We don't have the old school Hockenheim anymore. In terms of a flat out blast, it's kind of, Monza's almost on its own. Some of the teams develop their own aero packages just for that race, or at least that's the extreme of their setup parameters that they can manage. And of course, Max Verstappen's win this year is the fastest World Championship Grand Prix of all time. Obviously, he broke the qualifying pole lap record as well. So it is a cathedral of speed, isn't it? Still, even with the chicanes.
It is. And you have the old banking still there in the background.
That's so cool, the banking, Can't imagine racing around it, though.
Well, you can't climb up it. You try to climb, you have to go up on all fours to get to the top, and you think, they race round here? Yeah.
And some of the teams even thought it was too dangerous in 1960.
Yeah.
So it tells you how dangerous it was. I mean, we should actually mention it has its dark side, doesn't it? Obviously, it had the Wolfgang von Trips accident in 1961 that killed 15 spectators. Jochen Rindt was killed there in practice in 1970. Yeah, it has had it. Ronnie Peterson, of course, although that was more complications afterwards. But I suppose any race circuit that's held as many international events as Monza is unfortunately going to have some stories like that.
Yeah, 78, I was there in the press box and we saw it occur way off to our left. There was a huge ball of orange flame at one point. Luckily, it didn't take hold. But yes, that was significant insofar as it was the first race that Professor Watkins had been. Bernie Eccleston had brought Prof. Watkins in, and he saw at first hand the lack of safety facilities and medical treatment thereafter, and that triggered a lot. So it was a pivotal race, a pivotal place from that point of view as well.
And it's it has hosted some special positive moments as well, hasn't it? I suppose one that Ferrari fans. I mean, we've talked about in the teams episode, Ferrari having passionate, a national support. Monza's the venue for that national support. That's the home game.
It is, and add to that, I mean, 76 when Lauda made his comeback. Niki Lauda made his comeback. Oh my goodness me! I've never experienced anything like it. Again, I was talking about applause at Senna at Monaco during his qualifying lap. The same thing happened at Monza when they start practice and the cars come out, they trickle out one after the other, and the crowd's always cheering. And always, obviously, when a Ferrari appears, it's like a winning goal's been scored, and they're only just coming out. Lauda was the last to appear, and they just stood up and applauded. There was no cheering. There was just respect, and I tell you, that just gets you going, because you think, oh, this is Monza, this is passion, this is Ferrari.
I think that's the greatest sporting comeback, not just motorsport. I think that's probably the greatest sporting comeback of all time. Niki Lauda coming back in 76, remarkable story. We should also mention, of course, the incredible 1971 finish. Before the chicanes were put in, 0.61 of a second covering the top five. Peter Gethin just pipping Ronnie Peterson, and 2 years before that, Jackie Stewart's rather clever long fourth gear to get him across the line ahead of, I think Jochen Rindt was second there. Was there 3 or 4 of them across the line together? So, some great slipstreaming battles before the chicanes were put in as well, which obviously has to be factored into this. Right, well, let's get on to number 3, which, like Monza, has been around for a long time in the championship, since the very, very first World Championship race. I would argue the reason I put it ahead of Monza is I think it's remained a great racetrack, both from a challenging point of view for the drivers and also as a race venue in a way that perhaps Monza hasn't. And that is Silverstone, which is where we are. Just say thank you again to the BRDC for having us. But 60 World Championship races at Silverstone. Obviously, the 1950 European Grand Prix, as it was advertised, the first championship race. And actually, if you include the BRDC International Trophy, I reckon that Silverstone has hosted more contemporary F1 races than any other circuit. So, I mean, we've got so many memories to choose from for Silverstone. What would be your highlights from Silverstone's time in F1?
Well, it's played such a significant part right throughout the story, hasn't it? From my dad and my uncle coming across here for the first British Grand Prix after the war. I mean, it was such a major event. It was the return of motor racing after the hostilities. You can imagine how important that was. To the way Silverstone has kept in touch with what's needed. So, for example, I was here in 67 at the original, as a spectator at the original Silverstone. The original Silverstone was fantastic. I mean, it was a flat-out blind.
Unbelievably fast. For a while, faster than Monza on the calendar.
It was incredibly quick. But with some tricky, with Copse and Maggots and Beckett's and so on, and Stowe as well. So there was all tricky corners, but very, very fast. To moving in, you remember then they had that bridge corner. They put in the loop after
Bridge
that
after Abbey,
that
flat
was
through.
that was a really good corner. Really,
I
really
really
good corner.
missed that. I think that's one of the great lost corners.
It
Bridge.
is, because you could watch, and spectators could watch, and you could see them coming through, and you could see who was living,
so quick,
and how they were coming out in the exit. And it was good.
Mansell in the 14B on the qualifying. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So to do that, and then to do what we've got now. I mean, I think the layout we've got now is a tremendous compromise. They've really got it just right. To keep the maggots, to put in the Beckett's complex, which is fantastic by any standard, and to the additional loop is good. No, I think they've done a wonderful job, and it deserves its place as a Grand Prix circuit. It's old world, yet it's kept pace. It's a challenge. It's long, which is good length to it, and it's got the atmosphere. I mean, the drivers love it. It's still, the British fans are so passionate and so respectful and understanding. They know what's going on, and that's so important. And the British drivers all love. I mean, they'll all tell you, they just love coming here because of the support they get and the way it all works. So it's hats off. Not just saying it because they're our host, but hats off to the BRDC. They do a brilliant job.
I've had 3 wow moments growing up watching motorsport, and one of them was watching Formula 1 cars for the first time through Mags and Beckett. So it gets my vote from a spectating point of view, and also lots of brilliant moments. Rint Stewart 69, Mansell chasing down PK in 87. I mean, actually Rubens Barrichello in 2003, one of his probably greatest drives. What a Grand Prix that was. Okay, we had some interference that we could have done without, but it's had a lot of fine races and still produces good events now, consistently towards the top of the fan votes as well, that's why I edged it ahead of Monza, really, because to me they're both venues that should always be on the calendar, or at least for the foreseeable future, and I think they both are at the moment. Right, let's go on to number 2. It's another of the old venues, and I suppose I've put Spa ahead of Silverstone and Monza, probably because even better on the driver challenge front. Just such a superb venue. The drivers love going there. A lot of racing drivers pick it as their favourite race circuit. It's had, like Silverstone and Monza, it's hosted some fantastic Grand Prix over the years, tends to reward the greats. So 58 World Championship Grand Prix. There have been a few years where Spa's fallen off the calendar, which I think has been a shame, but it's still a great venue now, isn't it?
It's brilliant. I've been lucky enough I didn't see a Grand Prix in the old circuit, but I went to the 1,000-kilometre sports car race in 74 and saw the old circuit in its majesty. And in those days, when you look at the climb from Eau Rouge up to Les Combes, now it's a straight line, but back in the day it wasn't. It was a series of twists and turns that actually got tighter as you went up, but they were having to just focus even more on each one to Les Combes, which was then the left-hander. And if you walked up to the top, you could then see them on the far side, like little matchbox toys going along. You hear them. They would disappear out of sight, and they'd be going away on to Stavelot, and then you'd hear the noise of an engine flat out coming up the other side of the valley, and you could watch them coming up towards the La Source and the pits, which really brought home to you the size of the place. When they then stopped because of safety reasons, and they said they were going to adjust it, I thought, oh, well, that's that. But I think they made a wonderful job, because the circuit, as we know it now, has somehow maintained the atmosphere and challenge of Spa, losing it at all. I think that the new bit, for want of a better word, it's not new anymore, obviously. But what I would
the 40-odd years.
Yeah, just that 40 was fabulous. Brilliant job. And so the circuit is very much, as you've said, a driver circuit, one they all love, with a great atmosphere, great tradition, and just a wonderful place to be, with the weather, obviously, so long as you take your waterproofs with you, because it's going to rain at some point. And I mean, the organisation could be a bit chaotic from the point of view of getting in and out, but hey, when you get there, well worth it. And also the chips and the mayonnaise, pretty good.
And it's hosted, obviously, its fair share as well. I mean, you mentioned the rain there, Jim Clark's victory by, I think, getting on for 5 minutes at the 1963 Belgian Grand Prix. Schumacher winning from 16th in 1995, dominating in 97. Yeah, we've seen lots of fantastic fantastic races there, haven't we, as well? So, I wanted to make the point that both the old big track with the Master Kink, I think I've read that Dennis Jenkinson, who didn't, let's face it, wasn't a fan of Jackie Stewart's safety crusade, I think it's fair to say, but he used to go out to the Master Kink to see who was really on it, and I think he begrudgingly had to accept that this annoying Scottish guy actually did know what he was doing.
I mean, it was called the Kink. It wasn't a kink, it was a left and a right. And there was stout buildings either side. I mean, a fish and chip shop just a bit beyond it. And you thought, I remember when the last race was 1970, and Grand Prix, sorry, and Chris Amon in the March 701. I mean, imagine going around Spa in a March 701. It just mind boggles. Chasing Pedro Rodriguez in the BRM, and when they checked the gear ratios and his revs, he was doing 199 miles an hour through the Master Kink, and you think that's not possible. That's when you go and look at it. You can still look at it today. It's still there. You think that's not possible, but it was, and that just shows you the challenge and the majesty of that place.
One of the things that really grabbed my attention with the old Spa, which isn't F1, I'm going to mention it anyway, is in 1971 when the 917s were there for the 1,000 kilometres. The average speed of the winning car, the average speed of the race, was 155 miles an hour. That's with fuel stops, driver changes. I mean, that really shows you how quick the old Spa was. But as you say, the modern one has kind of continued that majesty, hasn't it, without being quite so crazy, because you couldn't race modern cars on the old Spa. So in a way, it's better to have what we've got and carry on with the history.
No. Hats off to them. They've done a brilliant job.
We hope Spa, Silverstone, Monza and Monaco remain on the F1 calendar for many years to come. But number one on this list is one that has already fallen by the wayside. It was going to have to be something pretty special to beat those four great tracks with all their history and driver challenge. But I'm hoping that Maurice is going to agree with me that the Nurburgring Nordschleife, and I just mean the Nordschleife and not the new 2-point-whatever mile track that held 19 races, but I mean the Nordschleife, proper big 12, well, it's up to 14 miles now, isn't it? 22 World Championship races it held, and obviously it's got history going back before the Second World War, but as a driver challenge, it is far and away above the other tracks on this list. It was just epic, wasn't it?
If you haven't been to the Nurburgring Nordschleife, go, because you can pay however many euros it is and drive around. You've got to do it. It is unbelievable. It's beyond your wildest imagination. I may say to you, it's 14 miles long and 170 odd corners until you go and see it and see how one follows it. I mean, I was in awe of the place before I even got there, and I saw a couple of Grand Prix there. 71 was the first one, and I was there in 74 doing a fly on the wall story with the Brabham team. I wasn't a proper journalist, but I scrounged my way in, and then I was there as a journalist in 76 when Lloyd had his accident. And in 76 Jackie Stewart had retired at the end of the previous year, and he was doing work for Elf, then the sponsor of the Tyrrell team, and he was chauffeuring journalists around the Nürburgring, and I managed through my mentor Ian Young to get a seat in the BMW sitting beside him as he drove, and he wasn't going fast, he was simply showing us what was him.
Where to be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I didn't utter a word. I just my mouth was open the entire duration of the lap when he would point out little things about, long apex corner, you don't turn until you see a house. There it is, turn in now. And they're going up to the carousel, one tree taller than the other, aim for that, because the track would go left, right, but he would just straight line it to watch out here, because this will pull you in the adverse camber here is not good. Look, it'll pull you towards it. And imagine racing around this place. I was taken around twice on fast laps. One with Bernd Schneider in a AMG Mercedes, the car that was used in the Touring Car Championship, and once with Norbert Haug, who was the Mercedes team of head of motorsport. Now Norbert was actually a pretty handy driver, and he used the Mercedes safety car to take us around. But he knew his way around, because when he was a journalist writing for whatever magazine it was, they did a lot of road tests, and he did them all at the Nürburgring. So he knew his way around. And when you're with somebody who knows what's over the next blind brow and sets the car up before you get there, it increases your respect and also your knowledge of the challenge and how to get around it and how to deal with it.
There's so many blind corners and dips and
yeah, but the problem is that you try to remember it, and then you think, oh, wait a minute, and it's not where I thought it was, and then it's too late because it's gone left instead of right. It's like that. I mean, you think, yeah, that's not possible. You wouldn't forget that, but you do. It just keeps going. No, it's a superb place.
And it's also a place for epic performances, isn't it? So you've got Juan Manuel Fangio's, famous coming back against the Ferraris in 1957, Sterling Moss beating the shark-nosed Ferraris in 1961, Jackie Stewart winning by over 4 minutes in the appallingly wet conditions, which they wouldn't hold a race in that now, in 1968. And actually, I always think it's worth mentioning because Niki Lauda's name is always associated with the Nurburgring because of his crash in 76, but also he was the first and only F1 driver to ever get around the track in under 7 minutes, which he did while taking pole in 1975. So it's an epic venue for epic drivers to show their best, isn't it, really? Well, it was. Which still is if you're a GT driver, as Max Verstappen is finding out, because he fancied to go at it, so he went and drove in a GT3 Ferrari.
Full respect, because that's one way to learn about, and it shows a lot about his soul, that he wants to go and experience a place like that. Lauda, that lap, because he didn't like the place, to go and do what he did tells you a lot about Niki Lauda. But one thing that, I was asked quite often, but they only do 13 laps. So you only see them 13 times if you're out in the woods watching. But the whole point about that is when you went to the Nordschleife to watch the Grand Prix, you're going to an event. So you would camp out in the woods and have a party and have a barbecue going. And you would wait for the start, because we stood down there in 1971, and you hear them coming and you see them all go by. And you knew you weren't going to see them for another 6 or 7 minutes. So everybody adjourned back to the fire with a drink, and the loudspeakers would be quiet. There'd be nothing until the commentator at Adenauer Bridge would give you the order as they came by, bang, 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 and you go, oh, hang on a minute, he's moved from 5th to 6th. I wonder what happened. And then you couldn't wait for them to come by to see if there'd been any change. I need to hear them coming. And back past the go, it would be an event like no other. It was not your normal Formula One race, but yet it was a superb event to be at.
Well, of course, that delay in things helped Fangio in his 57 race, because he basically had that they had sort of an agreement, didn't they? First couple of laps just looked like you're still not, and then lull Ferrari into do the whole go slow sign. So they go through, then it's like, give him the nod. So he gets one whole 14-mile lap going flat chat. They don't notice until that lap, and then they've got another lap before they can tell Peter Collins and Mike Hawthorne. So he's already smashed the lap record twice before they've even known he's coming, which you couldn't get anywhere else.
No.
Because, with modern timing, you wouldn't be able to do it now because they'd have all sections, wouldn't they? Sector timings. But, look, there's a good chance that Max Verstappen will do the Nürburgring 24 hours next year, which I applaud wholeheartedly, which would be a tougher test than the NLS race he did. A lot of people got rightly excited about the fact that he was doing it, but he was against a field that you would expect him to win. But if he does the same at the Nürburgring 24 hours against all the pro GT3 drivers, then fair enough. But I would suggest if he's going along and you're an F1 fan, maybe go along to that and tick that off the list as we've decided that it's the greatest F1 circuit ever. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Thank you very much. Well, thanks very much, Maurice Hamilton. Obviously, we'd love to hear more and more of your stories. Perhaps we'll come up with some more tracks that you've with your favourite memories of some of these circuits that we've not talked about. But yeah, we decided 10 was Brands Hatch, 9 Montreal, 8 Kyalami, the original layout, 7 Interlagos, 6 Suzuka, 5 Monaco, 4 Monza, 3 Silverstone, 2 Spa, and 1 the Nurburgring Nordschleife. Well, thank you very much, Maurice, for joining me, and thank you very much for listening. We'll be back soon with another Autosport podcast.